Hi there.
Hello,
Hello, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm well, thank you.
Good. So you're in the UK. Are you in London?
No, I'm in Hampshire at the moment, so yeah, that's where I live. Yeah.
My son lives in Wantage by Oxford.
Oh, nice. Okay, nice. Yeah.
Yeah. He loves it there. He's been there a while.
Oh,
Um,
very good. Where are you dialing in from?
Florida.
Oh, okay. Hence the sleevelessness and yeah,
Yeah. It's nice out.
yeah. Oh, very good.
Okay, so I have already done your introduction.
Okay.
So they'll just edit it in and we can just start. I'll start asking you questions and I will likely come up with my own questions as we go. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Is
of
it
course.
how important is it that we stick with the half hour? If we go a little bit over, is that
Yeah, that's fine. I mean, not too much over, but yeah, that's fine.
okay? All right. So how did you get interested in plant-based nutrition?
Yeah. Oh, hi, Kathy. Thanks for asking. So I adopted a plant-based diet back in 2013, really for ethical reasons. So I became vegan for the animals. It was no longer aligned with my moral or ethical viewpoint to consume animals or their products. I'd been vegetarian prior to that for a little while. But as a healthcare professional, as a practicing doctor, I became then interested in, well, how my health was going to be on a plant-based diet or a vegan diet and how to optimize my diet so I could support good physical and mental well-being. And I realized that despite having been a qualified doctor for sort of 13 years, that this knowledge wasn't at my fingertips. But when I did delve into it, I was alarmed at how much positive information there was to support a healthy plant-based diet for improving health, preventing chronic disease, living longer in good health compared to other diet patterns. And that's really what sparked my interest, realizing that no one else was really talking about that in the health space in the UK and wanting to bring that to the fore of my own clinical practice and finding other healthcare professionals that also wanted to use food as medicine, particularly plant-based diets, to improve their patients' health.
In the US, it's really hard to find information. I can remember when I started eating vegan like about in 2011, and I would have to take pictures to Whole Foods of the things that were in my recipes, and the people at Whole Foods wouldn't even know what the foods were. Yeah,
Well,
so
yeah, that's interesting to hear because I felt back in 2013 that I was getting all my information from the US and possibly some from Canada as well. So, from outside of the States, it feels like you're way ahead with some really kind of inspirational organizations providing education.
uh, so how do you think plant-based diets could improve health outcomes?
Yeah, absolutely. A very relevant question to the current health crises that we find ourselves in. So it won't be a surprise to your listeners that we're dealing with more and more chronic ill health, cardiovascular disease, cancer, type 2 diabetes, deteriorating brain health. Yet when we think about the root cause of these chronic conditions, it's very much linked to our dietary habits alongside other lifestyle behaviors like physical activity and exposure to toxins such as smoking and alcohol. So when it comes to our unhealthy diet, which is now the leading cause of chronic ill health globally, so for you and me in the UK and the US, we're basically not consuming enough of the foods that promote health. And nutrition science is actually very simple. A diet that's centered around fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts, and seeds, lots of herbs and spices for flavor and mainly water for thirst, is one that is known for decades now to be associated with lower rates of all of our common chronic conditions because it really pays attention to the mechanisms that then create ill health. So this type of healthy plant-based diet will reduce levels of inflammation in the body. It will reduce blood lipid levels like cholesterol that we'll all have heard of It'll help keep your blood pressure healthy. A fiber-rich diet full of all the colourful foods have nutrients that nourish our gut microbiome, which is really key to our immune system and the rest of our health as well. So there's a number of reasons why eating a plant-based diet would promote better health and certainly prevent, if not, considerably delay the onset of some of our chronic diseases.
What's the evidence supporting plant-based diets for improving planetary health?
Oh, well, that's a really broad question. And I think it's something that we should all be interested in because, as the WHO states, the climate crisis is the biggest health threat to humanity. Without a healthy planet, we have no healthy people. And it's absolutely clear that our food system is one of the key drivers of both the climate crisis and the ecological crisis. So our complete destruction of the natural world, loss of biodiversity, extinction of numerous species that's been happening over the last 50 to 100 years. And the reason that we're in this state is that our food system very much prioritizes the production of food from animals, which is really resource intensive. It uses enormous amounts of land, water, and creates a lot of pollution to the air, water, oceans, land, whilst producing foods that A, we don't need to eat, and B, is contributing to the deterioration of our health. It's quite alarming to think that more than 80% of farmland globally is used to raise animals for food, a food that we don't require. And yet it only produces 18% of global calories and 37% of protein. And so it's hugely inefficient. We're growing vast amount of crops to feed animals, which convert the crops into nutrients, but at a really inefficient rate. And really, what we need to do is move away from animal-based agriculture to a farming system that prioritizes the production of plant foods, which would lead to a release of land that could be restored to nature, could be used to capture carbon, and it would vastly reduce the negative impacts on the environment, such as greenhouse gas emissions, water, air, land pollution that I've mentioned already. And, we could feed more people. I mean, we can already feed the number of people on our planet. So it is a terrible situation that people still go hungry, but it would be easier to feed more people if we were all eating a plant-based diet.
How would you like to see the NHS in the UK embrace the evidence supporting plant-based diets for better health?
It seems a no-brainer to me that all healthcare systems, whether it be the UK one or around the world, really embrace the evidence that food is medicine, that you can use a healthy diet to support better physical and mental well-being, to prevent disease, and also in some cases manage and reverse chronic illnesses. So that data is quite clear. Yet we've been very slow to sort of incorporate this what should be common sense approach to healthcare into our hospitals. There's some optimism from you in the US, where in New York City, the mayor, Eric Adams, has been putting this into practice, both in the clinic, but also in the food that's being served at 11 city hospitals. And we've just had their press release from 2 years of now serving plant-based meals as the default option in hospitals because of the benefits to both individual and planetary health. And that's what I would really love to see in the hospital I work at and the institutions that I'm associated with in the UK, that we prioritise plant-based food, we support people to make those better decisions, and we create a learning environment when people access healthcare, that they know that they'll be served nourishing food and they'll come away inspired to do the same when they go home for their families and their communities.
Do you think that the institutions, the medical institutions and doctors in general are more accepting of plant-based theory than what they used to be?
I do think so. I think the narrative is changing, and I don't think anyone of my colleagues would disagree with what I've been talking about. It's not made easy to try and incorporate this type of sort of more holistic medicine when we're very much at the moment in the UK firefighting established conditions, which do need, pharmaceutical solutions, maybe surgical solutions. Whereas, we need to sort of flip healthcare upside down, and where we're dealing with the upstream drivers of ill health. But that's kind of not how the healthcare system in the UK certainly is set up. We create or are producing doctors and nurses that are dealing with end stages of chronic disease and are not necessarily in that position of expertise to necessarily guide that sort of different way of supporting people and changing behaviours, counselling and coaching them to really make the diet and lifestyle changes. And yeah, I mean, I think, the media and our education system also sort of lends a little bit of doubt to what I've described as quite kind of black and white science. So I think it's easy, given the food environment, for us to sort of trip up and go back to habits that somehow feel easier and more aligned with what we've been used to over the last 50 years.
What are the biggest myths that remain around plant-based diets?
Well, I think you'll probably have heard just as many as I have. I mean, the number one still has to be that, will we get enough protein on a fully plant-based or vegan diet? And with, even healthcare professionals believing that plants do not contain complete proteins or are not a source of complete protein. And both of those are myths. If you're eating a balanced, varied plant-based diet, meeting your calorie requirements, you will most certainly be meeting your protein requirements. There are some caveats to that, but you could say that about any diet pattern. There's always a little bit of nuance there where, for example, if you're an athlete, you might need to, plan your meals a bit more carefully. If you're an older person who's dealing with chronic conditions, you might need higher intakes of protein that require a little bit more planning on a plant-based diet, but it's all absolutely possible. And the fact is that plant foods contain all 9 essential amino acids, so they contain all 20 amino acids, just in differing amounts. And if you're eating a varied diet, you will not be at risk of not meeting your requirements. So I think that still remains quite a common myth, and really driven by the fact that, the media and the food industry really sort of connect meat with protein, and people don't think that there's protein in every single plant food, basically. And I think still the connection of dairy for calcium remains that entrenched belief that, dairy is a required source of calcium, whereas actually, of course, the cows get their calcium from, eating grass, and the grass gets it from the soil. So, we can go back to eating greens and beans and other calcium-rich sources and be absolutely fine. And of course, industry have innovated too, and there's calcium fortified dairy alternatives quite available now in most supermarkets.
Are plant-based diets suitable for all life stages? Like, should babies be babies, should they be plant? I'm not going to answer these questions for you. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Should babies be plant-based, and can elderly people be plant-based safely?
Yeah, I mean, the simple answer is absolutely yes. And our British Dietetic Association and your Nutrition Society in the US have clearly stated that plant-based diets can be appropriate for all stages and ages of life, so from cradle to grave. I think, we need to sort of embed that education, knowledge and skills into society better, because I think most people are still more comfortable planning a sort of omnivorous diet for older people or for younger children. But absolutely, there's no issues around that as long as it's well planned. To be honest, we're not planning the current diet of our children very well. So we need to change in some respect to again maintain healthful weight and good blood pressure and lipid profiles, but we can absolutely do that for our children and older adults on a plant-based diet.
You've got a book out. First of all, you've got a book out that you did with your sister. That's cool. On plant-based eating. What would you tell a person who wanted to go from the standard, we call it the standard American diet, maybe you could call it the standard British diet. I don't know, standard diet for people who are generally eating animal-based products. What would be the best way to transition?
Yeah. So I think, transitioning can look different for different people. I mentioned that I was for a long time vegetarian and then overnight went vegan, but it wasn't that difficult to give up dairy and eggs when you're pretty much eating a plant-based diet anyway. And with my my Indian background, those dishes are easy to compose. But so I think it looks different for different people. I think the key things are to understand why you want to do it and keep reminding yourself of what your motivation is, because it takes time to embed these new habits and you need to be certain in yourself the reason you're doing it, and that will keep you going on this path and meeting your goals. I think it's really great to make sure you do it with somebody, so you have some social support, whether it's a partner, a friend, an online group, and there's so many groups to join that will support you to do this, because it can be lonely if you want to do it yourself, and it's great having other people to throw ideas around dishes. And then I would suggest you take some time, maybe a week or so, just thinking about what your typical dishes are, what's in your store cupboards, like how you're going to sort of stock up your, new plant-based pantry compared to your sort of standard omnivorous pantry. Start getting through the ingredients you've got, and that you're not going to need anymore. And think about how you're going to veganize or make plant-based your everyday dishes. We all have sort of maybe 5, 6, 7 dishes that we reach for all the time, and it's very easy to think about how to making them plant-based. Your chicken curry is a tofu curry, your lentil your mincemeat bolognese becomes a lentil bolognese, and the beauty is that it's adaptable to any culture or traditional eating pattern. If you love Mexican food, Thai food, Indian food, it's very easy to find plant-based dishes using lots of herbs and spices. I think some basic cooking skills are really useful to have. So, it might be that you want to do some online cooking classes and just get used to some basic sort of stable recipes. And yeah, I think it's always useful to plan ahead. If you decide to go plant-based or vegan, suddenly eating out at your favorite restaurant might not be so straightforward. And so it's about planning ahead, looking at the menu, calling ahead, making sure they can do something for you, of which, most restaurants will be, certainly in the cities, and always be prepared. If you're going on a long journey, have a snack, have some fruit or nuts with you, because maybe you won't come across some easy reach vegan items. So I think those would be my top tips. Yeah, and don't be too harsh on yourself if you don't manage it all straight away. A lot of us have been brought up eating meat. It's a transition. As long as you know what your goals are and why you're doing it, it's perfectly obtainable.
We have a lot of health coaches and nutritionists and doctors and nurses listening, and almost all of our listeners are looking for ways to help people. Do you think just having the information available to their customers is good? Or do you have any suggestions on where to go or send people who want information on it? I know I started out with this because I went totally vegan because of gut issues, and I was afraid I was going to starve myself. So, I started learning about nutrition so that I wouldn't starve myself. And I think that, having somebody with all of that information available to you would be ideal.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you've got a person accessible to you that you can afford, that can support you in the initial stages, that's always really great, because, most of us don't have specific or specialist nutrition knowledge, and maybe people are already dealing with chronic conditions that they need some expert guidance on. I mean, I think as a practitioner, I think, you know, having some ready available resources, if your client, your patient shows some interest, is always really great, because you don't want to say, oh, I'll send that to you later, and you sort of lost that moment when somebody's really motivated. So, you know, it's really nice to have something at hand, whether it's, you know, you make a little handout that says, you know, try this website, this is my favorite recipe, this is a really great book. But again, I think, you know, thinking about my own practice, which is hematology, people with cancer, I think you do need to take a sort of individualized approach. Ask people, you know, how they think their diet is, you know, how much fresh fruits and vegetables they eat, are they able to cook, can they, you know, have they got a supermarket with fresh produce near them? Those sort of things are important to sort of be able to give sort of some general advice that's going to be applicable. And then I guess in lifestyle medicine, we try and sort of give, we don't really call it advice, but sort of coaching that will keep people accountable. So writing a prescription, as it were. So for most people, just starting off by thinking about swapping some of their meat dishes to, you know, something based on beans, and just buying some canned beans and swapping out meat for beans, adding in some fruits for snacks, adding a small portion of nuts a day as a snack, you know, great for cardiovascular health. So I think trying to have some specific advice based on what that individual has told you is relevant to their life. And actually, I think most people will probably have some good insight about things that they could do. It's not a surprise when you tell people, well, we should be eating more fruits and vegetables, and actually beans are better than eating your bacon, and actually some oatmeal in the morning might be better than your, you know, bacon sandwich. So I think people probably have those solutions. They just need a little bit of guidance, some tips. And then, yeah, I mean, you'll know there's so many great documentaries and books out there that, you know, could recommend. Of course, I recommend our own resources on my organisation's website, which is Plant-Based Health Professionals UK. There's downloadable fact sheets, book recommendations, various other resources and articles. So depending on what your client might be interested in sort of delving into.
Well, we'll put that information underneath the podcast, and then we'll also include how to get your book too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for being here with me today. I appreciate it. And I know everybody's learned a lot from you.
Yeah, thank you, Kathy. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Thank you. That was good.
Are you sure?
Yes, we're great. We don't have to do any editing. We're perfect.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you.
I think that it'll probably go out in about 3 or 4 weeks.
Okay. I'll look out for it. So I have, you may have seen that I've got 2 books. One which was, as you said, is the Q&A one with my sister. That's sort of the general public one, but for your healthcare audience, and it is available in the US. Oh no, it says my publisher's website seems to be under maintenance at the moment. Okay, I will send you I will send you the links, because I've got a textbook called Plant-Based Nutrition in Clinical Practice, which is
co-edited. Here, this is, you co-edited the textbook Plant-Based Nutrition in Clinical Practice. That's in the introduction too, so everybody.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Good.
Because it's in my bio as well. So there's 2. So those 2 will be great. And then, yeah, a link to my website. We've also got a podcast run by 2 GPs called In a Nutshell, that again is at the front of our website. So
Cool.
yeah. Cool. All right. Well, nice to connect, Kathy, and look forward to seeing the results of this.
Great. Thank you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.